one of my favorite and one of the wisest men I know, Fred Provenza, is back with us today. And I recently had the joy of reading a paper he hasn't published yet, but it is a mind-blowingly good paper. And I've encouraged him not to publish it in an academic journal, publish it where lots of people can read it because it's that important. And that paper is called Cosmic Dreaming. So to begin with, I'm going to start us off with a little cosmic dreaming prayer. Mother Tao, Great Spirit, Cosmic Dreamer, thank you for dreaming us all into existence and for the ability to live and love fully each day. May we realize our oneness with each other and Mother Nature and live and love fully and honor, love, and respect and support for all living beings now and in the future. Om, peace, amen. Aho, Great Spirit. It is done. It is done. It is done. And welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Paul. That was a beautiful, beautiful prayer.
Thank you.
I'll put a short prayer now, which is at the end of Cosmic Dreaming, a prayer of thanks, where I say, in awe with humility, I give thanks for my moment on earth with all its horrors, beauties, wonders, deep mysteries. I'm grateful for family and friends like you, Paul, who've accompanied me on this journey. I give thanks to the plants and animals who grace this planet, who daily gave their lives to sustain my life through meals prepared with love. Bless us and this planet for the greater good, whatever that may be, however limited our ability to fathom that. Amen.
Aho, Great Spirit. It is done. It is done. It is done. Woo! Fred, your paper was such a deep, profound, not deep and hard to read, but just deep. And I found myself getting emotional at times reading it because it was almost like looking into a time capsule and kind of going on a journey with you from your earlier life and a lot of the things we're going to get into today. And then it just progresses. And, I thought one of the things that hit me the hardest, which surprised me, was your commentary about Jesus on page 12, I believe, of the paper. I think it's a really important paper at this time in the world and for the reasons that we're having this podcast. So everybody listening to the podcast right now gets a sort of a deep inner look into the paper. But, to begin with, I wanted to ask you what happens when God becomes an idea instead of a mystery? How does an idea cloak the magic and the mystery of who each of us really are?
Yeah, I think, Paul, that's such an appropriate question. To me, a couple of things come to mind. One is it becomes very easy to concretize, right? To concretize. This is the way it is. One of the interviews that Bill Moyers did with Joseph Campbell,
Right.
it's part of our Myth series, is asking Joseph Campbell about these things. And, if we just realize that ultimately the mystery of being is beyond all categories of thought, right?
Yes.
The mystery of being is beyond all categories of thought. And Joseph Campbell says he liked what his friend Heinrich Zimmer said. He said, the best things in life can't be told because they transcend all thought. The best things in life are misunderstood because we get tangled up in the thoughts and the ideas, right? And the words. And he concludes the third best things are what we talk about. And mythology is that realm that relates to that which can never be known. As I mentioned in Cosmic Dreaming, when I was a child, a very young child, I'd lie awake at night just absolutely mesmerized by this question: what is nothing? And if nothing were, what would nothing be? It was mind-boggling to me. I would just be so, it still is to me. I think it's so easy, though, God is a name, God is a word, God is an idea, but its reference is to something that transcends all thought. And I think sometimes we don't acknowledge that, huh? And this question to me, what is nothing, helps to put that into a perspective. What is nothing? Yeah, and if nothing, what would nothing be? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
I love history.
It's something that's been brought up by countless of my students throughout the years of my teachings, because I go deep into these issues, especially in the more advanced levels of the Chek Institute Academy. And interestingly, recently, right now, my spirit gym practitioners are doing a homework exercise. I gave them a lesson on holistic thinking and what it takes to actually think holistically. And the question that I gave them is this: is God real? And so then I took them through each of the steps of holistic thinking and left them with the homework. Now I need you to go through each of these steps, and you have to ask the question: is God, all in small letters, real? Little God. Is capital G, little od real? And is capital G, capital O, capital D real? And so I define those little God as any being that has the power to change its environment. Capital G, little o, little d is the highest power of any belief system. And capital G, capital O, capital D is an absolute mystery, because it is that for which there is no other. It is the only being that can create and sustain itself. So we can't ever, get to it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of my long-term students and a graduate Chek professional who's just an amazing woman, Karina Krepp, said she gave a definition of God that she had learned from somebody else. I don't remember who gave it to her, but it was really cool. So I was asking them, what is God? And she said, God is the name of the blanket that covers a mystery. And I thought that was so good.
There again, huh? That's right. That's right.
But the issue of nothing. So here's how I address this. The question is, how can something come from nothing? And that's been a problem in science for a long, long time, and in philosophy as well. But what I found from my own inner explorations and going into deep dialogue with my soul on these things is that my soul said, you're asking the question the wrong way. There's no such thing as nothing in God. God is unconditional love, so it's no thing. And then my soul reminded me of Chang Tzu's statement: form comes from emptiness and emptiness comes from form. And so if we come to the awareness that God has to be aware of itself because it has nothing else to be aware of, and that it can only be dreaming, which is why your paper Cosmic Dreaming is so beautiful, because that which is unconditional does not have a mind. That's a duality. Mind comes later. So if we wanted to say, well, what is it that's no thing? It would be pure unconditional subject, because it's the subject that becomes aware of the object of itself, which would be like you being aware that you were dreaming. And we call it a lucid dream when we say, I'm dreaming, and begin to interact with it. So without going too far, my key point is, it's not nothing, it's no thing. And out of no thing comes something, and that is the object of perception. So anyhow, those are my 2 cents on that.
It's good, and it's deep mystery ultimately, huh? Just
yeah,
deep mystery, which is I'm totally comfortable with the mystery, huh?
Well, if here's the kind of the strange and interesting thing, and I think most of us as human beings know this: as soon as you solve a mystery, then all you do is go looking for another one. We always want something to explore. And since God is infinite, then it's just an infinite series of mysteries. And what I've found, and I know you've found this, I'm quite sure I can say that confidently, that the deeper the questions that you get the answers to in your life, the deeper your questions get. The more you understand, the more you practice spiritually, the bigger your questions get, and oftentimes the longer it takes to get answers. And then once you kind of find yourself feeling satiated, then now you have a broader horizon. It's like our horizon of awareness keeps expanding, so our questions keep getting bigger. And I don't think if we could answer the question, what is God, it would be helpful. I think it would be dangerous, and it would be actually an illusion, because if we could answer the question, what is God, it would automatically create an objectification of something that cannot be objectified. This is exactly why the Buddhists say, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him.
Yes. Oh, absolutely the case. Absolutely the case. It's a journey too, in the sense that you were saying, right? It just keeps expanding, expanding, expanding. And then you come to realize everything is connected with everything else, right?
Exactly. And that's,
It's one thing, right?
yeah, and I think that's the basis of spirituality. That's the difference between spirituality and religion. Spirituality is the awareness of the interconnectedness, interrelatedness, and interdependence of all beings and all things. But religion always draws these hard lines in the sands and fight over them. And so that's why I love Sean O'Leary's quote, religion is training wheels for spirituality, because, once you realize the truth, then we realize that there is no lines in the sand except the ones we make up, which just means more ideas. We're just fighting over ideas again.
That's right. And we do that over and over and over again. Part of being on the planet, part of being on this planet, the duality, right?
Yeah. I always tell my students this planet is a third grade classroom for souls. And, I have to remind myself when I get frustrated with the kind of the silliness and the ever repeating behaviors that are self-destructive, that why would I keep coming to a third grade classroom and expect things to change? There's only two kinds of people in a third grade classroom, students and teachers. And to the degree that we understand what's going on here, then we have the responsibility of a teacher. To the degree we don't, then we know we're in third grade, and to get to fourth grade, we got to pay attention.
Yes, absolutely the case. A training ground, huh?
Yeah, a training ground, and ultimately there's only one lesson going on, and that is how to love.
Yeah, over and over again. That's the lesson, huh? Is that we come here as a training ground, and what are we supposed to learn? Learn how to love, huh? Learn loving kindness and compassion for one another. And so the duality creates the
classroom.
The classroom, that's it. It couldn't be without that. And so, and I think of, what they said, that Betty talks about how we were eager, our consciousness, our spirit, whatever one wants to call it, eager to come here, to grow spiritually, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Eben Alexander, in his book Proof of Heaven, a neurosurgeon's journey into the afterlife, talks over and over again about that. I don't know. I know you read extensively, Paul, and I do too. But there's so many books. I don't know if you've read that book, but
yes, I have.
There's some parts in there that I think are just so important, so revelatory, huh, of his training. He was trained, of course, as a neurosurgeon. Best schools on the planet, basically, here in this country and other countries, and came back. He's working at Harvard. And I want to read you just a short thing here. I won't wear it out, but it's, he said, as a neurosurgeon, I'd heard many stories over the years, people who'd had strange experiences, usually after suffering cardiac arrest, stories of traveling to mysterious, wonderful landscapes, of talking to dead relatives, even of meeting God. Wonderful stuff, no question. But all of it, in my opinion, was pure fantasy.
Yeah.
What caused the otherworldly types of experiences that people so often report? I didn't claim to know, but I did know that they were brain-based. All of consciousness is. If you don't have a working brain, you can't be conscious. This is because the brain is the machine that produces consciousness in the first place. When the machine breaks down, consciousness stops. As vastly complicated and mysterious as the actual mechanics of brain processes are, in essence, The matter is as simple as that. Pull the plug and the TV goes dead. Or so I would have told you before my own brain crashed.
And then comes the reckoning.
And then comes the absolutely mind-boggling experiences that he reports. But to me, that's very, very revealing. It's easy in science to get caught up in that mind frame, right?
Oh,
He,
yeah.
Based on his near-death experience after that, then he came to see the mind doesn't produce consciousness.
No.
Not produce consciousness. That's totally separate. Rather, he says, the brain is a reducing filter that shifts the larger non-physical consciousness we possess in the non-physical worlds down to a more limited capacity to enable our survival during our moment on this planet, right?
Yes.
And so it's amazing to read. And then he goes on. He said, during my near-death experience, a question would arise in my mind, and the answer would arise instantly. Just as no physical particle in the universe is separate from another, right? This is quantum kind of
quantum entanglement.
Yes, that's right. Quantum entanglement. You look separate from me and all these objects, not at the quantum level. We're all one thing, right?
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a question without an accompanying answer. And they weren't simple yes or no answers. They were vast conceptual edifices, so vast they would take lifetimes to describe on Earth. But conveying that knowledge now is like being a chimpanzee, becoming a human for a single day to experience all the wonders of human knowledge, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's to say that there is a chasm between our scientific understanding of the universe and the truth as I saw is a considerable understatement. I still love physics and cosmology, still love studying our vast and wonderful universe. Only now I have a greatly enlarged conception of what vast and wonderful really mean. So it's amazing. And then, Paul Levy, you interviewed him
4 or 5 times. I love Paul Levy.
Based on his insights from quantum, he makes the same point. Instead of consciousness arising from the brain and all of matter arises out of, because of, within, and as a dynamic modification of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just drawing the parallels, right, between these people who have near-death experiences and how mind-boggling it was for those fathers of quantum, from Bohr and Schrodinger and Wheeler and so forth, so on and so forth. It blew their minds, right? Just totally blew their minds.
And Wolfgang Pauli had a 27-year relationship with Carl Jung, and together their dream was to use Jung's experience as a psychiatrist and psychologist and Pauli's experience as one of the founders of quantum physics to see if they could identify what the psyche was. Basically, they concluded that the psyche is pure energy at the top end and matter at the bottom end. And the chakra system creates the rainbow bridge between pure energy and matter. And so that's what the psyche is. It's the rainbow bridge between pure potential or God and matter at the bottom. And without a long ado, we are the complex weave of nature that creates the bridge between the two so that God can experience itself and come to awaken to itself consciously, because paradoxically, that which is unconditional can't know anything. To know something is a condition. So this is why I love alchemy, because the alchemist, really the whole philosophy of spiritual alchemy is how do we extract spirit from matter so that we don't have to be caught in and entangled in a material form. And that's really what alchemy from a spiritual perspective is all about, but it's free of all the religious baggage, which I just love.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You talked about myth in your cosmic dreaming paper. So you were mentioning origin myths and things of importance like that. So I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what is the importance of myth, and how has the study of origin myths and myths in general been supportive in your life? You know, we live in a world where stress is constant and distractions are endless. If you're like many of my clients juggling family, career, training, and spiritual practice, you've probably felt the toll it takes on your clarity and vitality. You may even be someone that can't get through the day without drinking coffee, even when it's not making you feel better anymore. That's why I'm excited to share something that's become part of my daily ritual, Nandaka by Peak. Nandaka means the sword of wisdom. It isn't your typical energy booster or coffee substitute. Nandaka is a sacred blend of organically grown adaptogenic and nootropic botanicals designed not to mask your fatigue, but to nourish your nervous system, feed your brain, and support deep, sustainable energy from the inside out. That's what true vitality is all about. Unlike most mushroom products that are stuffed with mycelium grown on grain, Nandaka is made from 100% fruiting bodies. That's where the medicine lives. You get the full spectrum of benefits of lion mane for mental clarity and nerve regeneration, reishi and chaga for modulating stress and inflammation, and ceremonial cacao rich in anandamide, the bliss molecule, to uplift your mood and calm your system. Even the cacao butter serves a higher purpose, acting as a delivery mechanism to carry these nutrients deep into your brain. When I take Nandaka before podcasting, teaching, writing, or conducting a therapy session, I notice something profound. The energy is steady, the focus is clean, and my creativity flows without resistance. It supports the body, the mind, and the soul all at once. And here's the truth. If your brain and nervous system are overstimulated and undernourished, you'll always be inviting burnout. That's why I don't treat the symptoms. I go to the source. And Nandaka aligns with that philosophy. I'm truly impressed with Nandaka, and that's why I'm excited to share this powerful, effective support and nourishment to help you stay vital throughout each day, to bring you many of the core nutrients most everybody's brain, nervous system, and body needs today. Currently, there are over 18,000 five-star reviews on Peak's amazing products, and Nandaka is trusted by some of the top minds in wellness for a reason, including me. These products actually work. Tune in, reconnect, nourish your core. Try Nandaka and feel the shift. Nandaka is a powerful ally, and right now you can get 20% off for life, plus a free starter kit with your first order and a rechargeable frother and helpful glass beaker for mixing your Nandaka exclusively at peaklife.com/Paul Chek. Once again, that's PIQUELIFE.com/PAULCHEK. peaklife.com/Paul Chek for 20% off for life plus a free starter kit with your first order.
I was conceived, born, raised Roman Catholic, totally in that tradition. And I appreciate that tradition, and I appreciate my parents, especially in relation to that. This notion of love one another, do things for one another. They took that to heart. And so I had a father who did wonderful things in the community, and a mother the same thing. So I don't begrudge that at all. One of the things that struck me from when I was a tiny child, again, going back to that child business, you know, I was taught that unless you were a Catholic, you weren't going to heaven, right?
Right, that's a problem.
There's one way to heaven. So I remember,
that's not just Catholic, though. That's all of Christianity.
Oh, that's right. So I remember asking my mother when I was tiny one day, how come only we Catholics are going to heaven? What about my Methodist friends, my Presbyterian friends? I wasn't really so much aware of Buddhist or other.
The rest of the world.
The rest of the world. And she did her best to try to tell me why only the Catholics were going to heaven. And I never believed that there is only one way, because I always thought, well, what about the person that's brought up a Methodist, or what about the person that's brought up a Buddhist, or so on and so forth? It didn't make any sense to me. But that, so that's the tradition I was raised in. I experienced 5 years of depression in the late 80s and early 90s. Never had anything like that. But the point I want to make here is that during that time, my wife and I took our young children and went to Australia for a year. Wonderful, wonderful year. But I was deeply in depression. Well, I went to visit an editor at the Ag Experiment Station. When we submitted our papers for publication, they needed to go through an editor first. And he was a very cynical guy. His name's Kurt Gutnick. Loved him, loved him. And I had told people, I didn't try to hide it, although I guess I was in a way from what people have told me. You seem so happy and stuff. But I had told people I'm not doing well. And so I went to see Kurt and tell him goodbye. And he looked at me and he said, "You're a sick bastard." I said, "Yeah, I am a sick bastard. I'm not doing well." He said, "Why don't you take this and read it while you're on the plane going over there? And when you get there to Australia." I said, "Okay, thanks. I'll do it." And what was it? Well, it was The Power of Myth.
Joseph Campbell. Beautiful. What a gift.
What a gift, Paul. What a gift.
He's not that cynical.
No. And, you think of people and our relationships with one another and how meaningful those things are. And that was huge for me. So we got over to Australia. We were living in Armadale. We're in this trailer up on the tablelands at first. We didn't have a little place to live in yet. Cold, very cold. You wouldn't think that, but it was very cold. And I'm there in the sleeping bag and I'm reading this stuff and I'm telling my wife, "Sue, this is fabulous. This is what I've wondered about my whole life, but nobody ever said a word. I never heard anything of this." So that was absolutely huge for me. And to hear someone talking about, so we read that and we couldn't wait to get back home. We loved the year, but we'd say, I know there have to be videos of this. First thing I did when I got back, I went over to the university library and there were the videos, checked them out, and we've watched those so many times. And just that discussion of all these worlds beliefs, and then talking about the elementary ideas, which are common to all of them, versus the cultural inflections, which we get hung up on, right?
Yeah.
Each other over cultural inflections. Another book, Lucid Dying. I don't know if you've heard of lucid dying. I put it at the end of Cosmic Dreaming. Sam Parnia, he recaps research. He's been doing years and years of research on the experiences of death by thousands of people. His studies obviously challenged the notion of death as finality and instead suggest a transition in which the body dies, consciousness expands into vastness, just what they all talk about, right?
Yeah.
Shortly after death, people relive their lives from the perspective of how they conducted themselves morally and ethically on this planet, love being they reevaluate their lives in a deeply purposeful way and come to recognize there was a higher purpose to their life, which was to better themselves based on how they treated others. That fits with the way, since I was a young child, I came to view this. We're in third grade, right? We're in third grade. And we all going to experience third grade in a different way.
Yeah. I think the issue with myth is that it is, it depends on which way you want to go about it. But from my studies of myth, it seems to be that the collective unconscious, which isn't unconscious, that's a problem. People call the unconscious unconscious. And that's a very dangerous idea right there, because everything that got created in the whole universe would have been created by what we call the unconscious. And so, okay, you're saying that some unconscious being created me with 100 trillion cells, each made of 100 trillion atoms, that dances and sings and makes love and has children and teaches. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Which, as a side note, I'd like to share with you how I teach my students to understand how the unconscious really is and what it is. I think you'll enjoy this. What I do is I say, pretend you're looking through a telescope, and I have them hold their hands up like I'm doing now, like you're looking down a pipe. And what you can see through that hole represents your ego's awareness. But right now, because I'm looking at Fred, doesn't mean my stereo's not back there, or the house isn't there, or Penny's not back there in her office. So whatever is not in your conscious awareness is the unconscious, but that does not mean that it's unconscious. In fact, it's probably closer to super conscious because it's what's bubbling everything up. So the unconscious is really the divine ocean, and everything we can perceive is just a wave on the ocean. So we're each kind of like waves, and I'm a wave that goes, oh, I am. And Fred says, I am. Well, hey, Fred, I'm over here. Oh, I'm over here. But on the bottom, we're all in the same ocean, and we are the same ocean. So I think one of the things I try to address with my students and my patients is, the unconscious is not unconscious at all. It's just that we have to have that reducing valve to have an experience of self and other. And if we were in a state of unity all the time, then we couldn't experience love because I wouldn't know Fred from Paul, just like right now I don't know, the names of the cells that make up my heart. They're there. My point is that I think myth is what we call the unconscious, but I'd call it the vastness of God consciousness speaking into and through us to help us understand what is truly meaningful and valuable about life itself.
Absolutely, Paul. And that's what comes through so nicely with Joseph Campbell's Power of Myth and his conversations with Bill Moyers. I started also to read books like The Tao of Physics by Friedrich Campbell.
Yeah, it's very good.
Absolutely. He was one of the first ones I know about to link the new physics, quantum and relativistic physics, with Eastern mysticism, right?
Yeah.
So reading about all those things and then realizing, thinking about how I was teaching the courses that I was teaching.
That was one of my favorite parts of your paper. That was profound, by the way.
Well, you think about the trials that we experience, and looking back on those were gifts. Those were that period, that 5 years of depression totally transformed me, no question. And myth then became such an important part. I didn't put this, I've been working on cosmic dreaming for 1.5 years now.
Is that right? Well, good job.
Well, I was asked to give a talk at the Old Salt Festival. They'd been after me for a couple of years to come and give a talk, and I finally agreed and went over there. And they asked me to talk to a politically divided audience, which is the way life is nowadays, right? I mean, extreme division and polarization, yeah. And to talk about, to just reflect and to try to combine. He didn't say it quite like this, but he says, I love the way you bring in the spiritual part of things, and the cultural part and ecological. And so I love to write about those kind of things, Paul. Actually, it's a way to get the thoughts on to express. And so I've worked on that, but
it's hard to synthesize things. I mean, for you to put what you did in 14 pages, it reminds me of something Walt Whitman once said. You probably heard it. He wrote a letter to a friend, and it was quite a long letter. And he begins the letter by saying, I would have written you a shorter letter if I'd had time.
That's right. And Mark Twain says it takes about two days or 2 weeks to put together a good 2-minute impromptu presentation. Right?
Yeah.
It was a joy to just to try to articulate those things, those ideas. And it's a reflection. I'm mid-70s now, and you kind of reflect back over what you experienced. And so reflecting back on the years of depression, and then on cancer and so forth. And those were gifts.
I think it's not only great to hear you say that, because there's probably lots of people listening out there that could be depressed or dealing with cancer or some other kind of illness or disease. And sometimes those can scare the living hell out of you, as you can imagine. And I think hearing from people like you that have made it out the other side, it's kind of like Jonah's whale, getting eaten by the whale. You're even if you make it past the teeth, the question is, what's going to happen when I get those hydrochloric acid bath in the stomach? And of course, that's my physiological mind. But But the fact that Jonah made it through the whale is sort of the story of us having to work through these challenges. And there's an example of how even a myth like Jonah's whale can help you put a challenge in life into context. And I think the important thing is just reach deeper. And I think challenges like that are always great opportunities for deepening our connection to God and to the people that love us, and to help us get more clear on what we're here to live for.
Oh, absolutely, Paul. And you read in there a couple of places I put I had become a cosmic voyager with amnesia, right? And
Yeah.
that helped me to wake up. I totally feel that same way. Well, after we came back from Australia, I was trying to figure, I thought I can't teach classes the same way. I can't teach the same way I've been teaching. It's dead, basically, right? I lecture, you take notes, and you spit it back to me on exam. The typical way that happens, right? But I lost some classes along the way. I didn't put that in there. We can,
That's
so,
okay though. But what came out the other end was beautiful.
yeah. So imagine that you're in a range science class, supposed to be learning about cows and grass and whatever, and you're seeing a Joseph Campbell video. That's a little
Perfect.
bit. It's a little bit. Yeah, it was perfect. But I remember at the end of one class, these two gals came and they said, "We loved that." And they said, we would like to have an extended version of what you were doing in there. And I thought, there's no way they're going to come back. First day of fall semester, there they were in my office. So, okay, so what are we going to do? And for 2 years, Paul, we had sessions every couple of weeks. I don't remember for sure. Myth and the Management of Natural Resource.
It's amazing.
I
wish like hell I could have been in that class with you.
Well, you'd have fit perfectly, Paul. And I remember the student, and there were grad students, there were undergrad students. It was we just met informally, and we'd talk. We'd watch a video. Different people would bring material in related to world mythology, and what's that mean in terms of how we manage natural resources. It was beautiful, and the beauty was, everyone was doing it because they loved the experience of that. And I remember one grad student say, "This is something we don't get in our education." And I thought, you aren't kidding. And that's when I started working toward what I described there in Cosmic Dreaming, of this needs to be a part of it. If we want to try to think holistically about the challenges that we all face, I lecture, you take notes, is I came to view it, for me personally, not I'm speaking for others, but for me personally, it's kind of an arrogant way to approach something that's exceedingly complex.
Yeah.
It was just amazing what happened in that non-credit. And that for 2 years, we did that for 2 years. It finally broke down. And when I think about it, why it broke down, some of the people involved originally had moved on. But it came to be, there was a little bit of some people that came, it was more about the dogma. And it's like, no, this is the dogma. This is, forget that shit, honestly. It's about the openness and admitting we're all students, we don't know anything, but then thinking about, about the myths and what does that mean in terms of living with one another, with the landscapes we inhabit, out of love for one another and the landscapes we inhabit. It was fabulous.
Enzymes are one of the most important things we can use to supplement our diet. Very few people have normal levels of digestive enzymes. It's extremely common to be digestive enzyme deficient because so many people are eating cooked foods, processed foods, packaged foods, etc. The best digestive enzymes I've ever found are masszymes by Bioptimizers. And one of the things I like about them is not only are they the most advanced technology for how they're produced, the science behind them, but I take them on an empty stomach every morning and every night as proteolytic enzymes to help clean my body. So I've got Wade here, who's the formulator of these enzymes, to tell us how do they work as digestive and proteolytic enzymes, because today I think we really need to be supplementing with high quality enzymes. So Wade, what's unique about masszymes?
Well, one of the interesting things is undigested protein is one of the biggest contaminants that cause problem for people, whether it's in their blood or inflammatory conditions or even impairing recovery. And it's quite common amongst athletes who have high protein diets, interesting enough, who are looking to add recovery, but they're not breaking down their protein effectively. And that was my case way back in the day as a former bodybuilding champion. So we set about cultivating and developing an enzyme formulation that handled all of the amino acids in a pH range from 2 to 12, as well as providing an assortment of assistant enzymes. In other words, it doesn't just break down protein, it handles carbohydrates, it handles fats, it handles fibers, a variety of different things, and they work synergistically together to make sure that you can break down just about any food and digest it properly. Now, when you talk about the difference between enzymes, there's digestive enzymes and systemic enzymes. Systemic enzymes such as like nattokinase or serrapeptase. Well, they don't help break down digestion, but they can break down inflammation or inflammatory conditions, undigested proteins, or scarring tissue inside the body. Well, it turns out when you take masszymes on an empty stomach, it works exactly the same way. It will go into the bloodstream and now works as a systemic enzyme, reducing inflammation, accelerating recovery times. Matt just tore his Achilles tendon and made a full recovery after surgery within a few weeks, which they expected for many months. He was taking as many as 100 a day. Now, I'm not suggesting people do that, but this was an extreme condition. And the bottom line is masszymes is great for recovery, for cleaning up undigested proteins in the system, as well for digesting just about any meal. If this isn't the best digestive enzyme or systemic enzyme that you've ever taken, you get your money back. That's the Bioptimizer guarantee.
Spirit Gym with Paul Chek listeners can get 15% off their purchase of masszymes by going to bioptimizers.com/Spirit Gym and use the code PAUL15 at checkout. You can choose from 3 different sizes, and in addition, Bioptimizers always have special bonus gifts and additional savings when you get multiple bottles. So go to bioptimizers.com/Spirit Gym and check out masszymes.
Well, you're bringing up something very interesting for me, and that is you had 2 women come to you that wanted to go beyond the rational, the logical, the weighable, the measurable into an experience of learning. And that, to me, is what's missing. We are in this patriarchal, left brain dominant culture that wants to wrap and pack and conclude and weigh and measure and stamp and seal everything. And I think for me, that's, I'm going to use a term of my own creation. It's academic laziness. Because if you think, okay, I know it all, then that's the problem with any belief system. You automatically stop asking questions, and that's the end of the mystery. And that's exactly why Nietzsche said God is dead. As soon as the church concretized everything in the mass, then now you've turned a symbol into a sign, and that's the end of it. Nobody has an enlightenment experience at a stop sign. But if you meditate on Jesus on the cross, it can take you places. And every time you do it, you can go somewhere else and have an endless series of potentially even mystical experiences. And that's one of many symbols that you could do that with. I personally feel that the danger of dogmas is that it's used by people that have the interest of controlling minds to control minds, but it's also something that people they don't really understand the philosophy of learning. And it also is a symptom of mental laziness. And I have to deal with this in students all the time. And I'm like, I'm not a guy to be mentally lazy with. In fact, one of the things I have to say the most is people ask me questions over and over again. And I say, why are you asking me a question that you can answer yourself?
Yeah,
and they just look at me with a blank stare. I go, you can answer. That's right in your manual. It's right in front of you. It's been taught to you several times in previous classes. Don't be mentally lazy, because human beings are the most complicated thing you're ever going to work with. If you think the space shuttle's complex, The space shuttle's not as complex as the cells in your little finger. You're dealing with the most complex living organism we know of, not to exclude whales and dolphins and others, but the mind of the human being is far more complex than any of the other animals. They don't light their homes on fire and poison themselves. And so I'm always trying to teach my students to actually enjoy the journey of diving and enjoy. The problem with the dogma is it's got a conclusion to it. I say, no matter what I believe about God or anything, it's a hypothesis, and I'm waiting for a Fred Provenza or a Sean O'Leary or a Paul Levy or whoever else to come along and blow a hole right in my hypothesis. And that pushes the horizon back, and then boom, now I've got a new project, and I think that's what's missing in our entire education system.
Oh, Paul, I love every word that you said, every last word. I couldn't agree more. After I went through that transformation with teaching, I used to tell the students, look, I don't want you to think like I think. I really don't care what you think. I want you to think.
I loved it when you said that in the paper. I literally just thought that was awesome. I'm like, go, Fred. Just fucking think, please.
And
sorry for being so explicit, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, it's so different. And some students really, really felt threatened by that approach of, I'm not going to lecture anymore in this class. I'm going to set this. My job is to set the stage so that we can engage in beautiful dialogue with one another.
Mm-hmm.
But it was incredibly threatening. But so I would give them take-home examinations, and I'd say, what does the material that we've covered in this section mean to you professionally? What's it mean to you personally? And if you think it's bullshit, just say it. Just say it.
Yeah, good.
Tell me. If you think I'm not going to misgrade you, just say it. And to watch the transformations during the semester, whatever it was, of those two, it was just so amazing to read what they would say and to see how some that came in and were just, all the controversy that's going today, of course, in many fronts, but all the controversy about what a person should eat or not eat, right?
Oh my God.
Eat meat or not eat meat, save the planet. Not. Well, back in those days of the early 90s, the late 80s, people being just viscerally angry, and many groups were involved in this kind of movement where they wanted all cattle off of landscapes. And so you have these classes where you have students from all different backgrounds, range, animal science, conservation, wildlife, fisheries, and they had quite different beliefs about how land should be managed. And so on the first day of class, I would start to set the stage of being vulnerable, being open, tell some about my background, and then go around the room and let the students introduce themselves. And you could see the anger and the hostility from the first day, where they were ready to fight. Nobody ever went to sleep in those classes. They were afraid they'd get a knife in their back, I remember Paula's secretary took the class. I forget why she did, one of the secretaries in the department. And after that first day, she came up to me and she said, how do you do this? How are you going to teach this class? These students are so pissed off at one another already. How do you do it? But by then I had learned that anger and that energy was the vehicle that would transport us.
What you're reminding me of with all this explanation of the anger and the polarization of ideas, I tell my students all the time, and it's a motto of mine: any belief worth living is worth challenging. If you don't challenge your own beliefs, then you won't know when you're becoming blinder and blinder by the day. And Buddha said the only universal law is the law of impermanence, and that goes with ideas, and that goes with beliefs. And if you don't constantly try to ask yourself, is this really working? Is there a better way? one of the things that I've seen working in the medical industry for so long is that people graduate from medical school, chiropractic, osteopathic, physical therapy, you name it. They think they know everything now and they stop studying, and that's it. And I've met doctors and therapists that haven't cracked a book on anything new for 10, 15 years since they got their degree. And it's just like that's how you hold back the entire medical system. That's how you give poor quality care. And that's also how you become a danger to yourself.
Oh, amen to all of that, Paul. And I think, and it happens in science as well, right? It happens.
Totally.
Well, you come up with your pet hypothesis and you study that over a lifetime, and then you concretize that. And, many books have been written in the last 10, 20 years about the terrible downstream effects of some of where you're hiding data because it doesn't fit your hypothesis.
Right.
Those kind of things. But if we're to look at science as a tentative organization of working hypotheses that for the moment can account for what our limited knowledge, and that's always in that view. You can never prove anything, but the problem is we concretize all that, right?
One of the things that I see with science as it is now is that materialism is a conscious or unconscious way of escaping the responsibility of love. As long as you have a materialistic ideology, then everything is just an object. And one of the challenges with the Christian religion is that, we're fallen sinners and you'll have to toil in the thorns on earth. And so there's this sort of resent of the earth and resent of being and all the guilt and shame. And so when you start getting into materialistic based ideology, then, if you look, for example, at the World Economic Forum's ideology and B.F. Skinner's psychology, then there's no emotion about dissecting animals or doing, painful, torturous research on animals because they're just biological machines. There's not a spirit or a soul there. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in a soul. They don't believe in spirit. So when you believe everything is just some form of matter that human beings have the hubris to control and do what they want with, then concretizing things and making things objective and ignoring the subjective aspects of life becomes a comfortable way of living. And look what that's got us to now. We're on the edge of an ecological collapse in many, many different ways. And people keep justifying science as backing the abuse of glyphosate, pesticides, and every other thing that's poisoning the planet. And it's all validated by science. Every drug that was ever taken off the market for killing people was first scientifically validated. And so, we're really in a moral and ethical crisis, which goes right back to the issue of myth, because almost all myths have something to do with the principles of morals and the ethics of human relationship.
My wife Sue and I talk about these kind of things all the time, and how we've broken our relationships with one another, with the landscapes that nourish and sustain us. And we've forgotten that we're members of nature's communities. What we do to them, ultimately, we do to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And only by, I think, nurturing them can we end up nurturing ourselves. And we do that by declaring love, not war, on one another and the landscapes that we inhabit. That relationship that our ancestors had. And so their myths and the ways that they experienced being alive on this planet, I can relate to so much.
I've seen now several times in the whole issue of AI and people making statements like, we are a threat to nature and we're going beyond our nature. And I've seen a number of people reply and say, we are nature and everything we create is nature. And I thought, well, that's a cute little argument to avoid a deeper realization. And so I want to share what I think about that. In nature, death always produces more life. Everything that dies in nature is feeding life. Life feeds off of life, which produces death, and death becomes the source of life. That's what a compost pile is. Everything that dies in nature is consumed by the microorganisms, and it feeds the plants and the animals. It's a circle of life. But when people think that what we're doing now is naturing, I have to make the point that you depart from nature when the death you produce no longer feeds or supports life. And we have actually become so caught in the realm of ideas and digital realities that we're producing massive amounts of death that do not feed life. We're producing food that doesn't even feed life, and people are sick from eating it. And the rates of disease, as you know, are through the roof. So I think one of the reasons we need to get back to myth and back to a deeper understanding of our role in, as, and with nature is that if we're not conscious of the fact that in nature, there is a cycle of life that is self-sustaining and has managed to work here on this planet for, 3.9 billion years. But we, in the last 50 years, have done more damage to the cycle of life in 50 years than anything that came before in the history of this planet. And so I'm trying to make this clear distinction. When you produce death that does not feed life, you are no longer working within the confines of nature. You're in another dimension of reality that is not congruent with life in this world. And that we have to get clear on fast.
Absolutely the case. And we're a long ways down that path. It hasn't taken us long to go so far. And sixth mass extinction is manifestation of that as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I often think, too, what you're saying, what do we do? Person dies, fill them with embalming fluid, right? Put them in a basket, put them down in the ground. Sue and I talk all the time, I especially. I hope that when I die somewhere out where we spend our time high up in the mountains, and that the coyotes get me.
Mm-hmm. My dream too.
Yeah. Sue and I used to love to hunt. And so you shoot an elk up there in 12,000 feet in those beautiful high meadows, and you give a prayer of thanks to that animal. And then, you gut it, and then we used to pack them out in quarters. But if you go back there, you see nothing went to waste.
No.
The coyotes were in there. They ate every bit of the intestines, everything. All you see is rumen content is left, huh? And that's what I tell her. But she teases me. She says, you're probably so toxic they wouldn't touch you anyway.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I take care of myself, because I want to make sure. I've always said to Penny and Angie, if I die, I want you to, because now there's a company that's trying to get a law passed. So maybe they already did it, but they have a tree that the coffin's biodegradable, and there's a tree planted in it. And so the tree roots grow into your body, and you become the tree. You become consumed and one with the tree. But I've said to Penny, if you can, chop me in little pieces and spread me all over the garden. And so the point being is, I don't want to be toxic to the land. If I'm toxic to the land, then I'm already a threat to home, And I think I've mentioned this book to you before, Farmers of 40 Centuries by Professor Hollis King. He shows pictures in China from, early 1900s, and they called their poop, they would collect the poop, they called it midnight soil, and they had a place in every village where they piled up all the poop. But researchers found a long time ago that it was starting to kill gardens because the poop of human beings was so toxic, it was killing the microorganisms in the plants, and they couldn't use it anymore. So, there's our departure from nature right there. Even our excrement is death to life. And that's something we should all be deeply concerned about.
Yeah, no kidding, Paul. And the more you read about all these chemicals in the environment that are in our bodies, then from the air we breathe to you name it. There's a farmer up here, Bob Quinn is his name. Has raised ancient grains for ages. Before organic was organic, he was doing that, raising ancient grains. And he sells them different places in the country and around the world. But they'll no longer accept his ancient grain in Italy. Why? Got too high levels of glyphosate. Does he use glyphosate? No, not. The rain clouds are carrying it and depositing it.
What do you reach for when you need a snack to keep you going between meals? Here at the Chek household, we always have a selection of Paleo Valley's meat sticks close at hand. They are made from 100% grass-fed beef and venison or pasture-raised pork and chicken, and they contain organic spices to create flavors like buffalo-style chicken, jalapeno beef, and maple bacon pork. Paleo Valley's meat sticks are naturally fermented, so they are shelf-stable without the use of icky chemicals or questionable ingredients. Did you know that virtually all other similar snack stick products use GMO corn-based citric acid encapsulated in hydrogenated oils to process their products? Who wants to be eating that? Paleo Valley's meat sticks taste amazing and are good for you too, packed with protein and also gut-friendly probiotics created by the fermentation process. Paleo Valley sources from USA family farmers focused on using regenerative farming practices. This type of farming helps produce more nutrient-dense, nourishing meat while supporting the local ecosystem by helping rebuild topsoil, improve biodiversity, and sequester carbon while avoiding the use of chemicals and pesticides. So if you're looking for a snack that is good for you, good for the environment, and good for your budget, go to paleovalley.com/Chek15 and get 15% off your order of Paleo Valley meat sticks. That's paleovalley.com/CHEK15 for a 15% savings. Snack and be happy.
In your paper, you beautifully outlined that how we lived before the Enlightenment or the Industrial Age. You described a way of living that in my life was close to the experience of living on our family farm, where we knew the animals, planted the plants, lived in tune with the cycles of nature, and were viscerally aware of the intimate connection between how we cared for the soil, crops, animals, and how we fed ourselves and lived. Can you share what you shared in your Cosmic Dreaming paper in this regard? Because I thought what you shared in there about exactly that, the types of relationships, but you made that demarcation that something happened when the age of enlightenment came, which I think, isn't that pretty much in correlation with the industrial age?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to excerpt a couple of things here just to go down. I like that. I want to make a comment too of growing up in Salida. When I was a young child, everybody lived in little tiny houses. And you go back there now, and there's all these little tiny houses, maybe 1,000 square feet. That was the norm, right? I was raised with 4 sisters and myself, and my parents, 7 of us in 1,100 square foot house, little tiny house. And then I think of gardens, those old folks from Italy. Oh my goodness, the gardens that they grew, amazingly beautiful gardens. And they all had chickens, and that they might have a pig or so. And so they had not lost that intimate contact with the natural world in that sense. And then we all foraged. We'd go I think of mushrooms in the fall, especially, you go out and forage. So there was still really quite a nice relationship. Well, now, if you go back to that little town, the houses are monstrosities. They're absolute monstrosities that have been built everywhere. A lot of the farms and ranches have been sold and subdivided, and monstrous houses put up on them. You're not going to see any gardens. You don't see any chickens. You won't see anybody with a pig. It just the evolution of what's happened. And let me digress and tell one story here. So when I got on the faculty at Utah State University, Sue and I decided to move from the little community where we had been, Richmond, it's called, to Providence. And we built a house. It wasn't a massive house at all, but we built this house. It cost us 72 grand back then. And that, with 2 kids and not a big salary, we were just flat out trying to keep up with all of that, right? And so you're always worrying about money, always worrying about money, always worrying about money. And then we decided to go to Australia. And so we sold the house, and we still had like 6 months before we went there. And we moved back to this little town where we'd been, Richmond, and moved into a rental house. And it was a dump. It was a dump. And, I was in there for a week or 2, and I thought, I love this dump. I absolutely love this dump. Why? I had no more worries about high house payments.
Yeah.
And my family, Sue and the kids were there. Then we moved to Australia and lived in an even worse dump. It had an iron stove like my grandma cooked on, where you throw the coal in there and the wood. And that was transformative. That was transformative. Because when Sue and I came back, we said, never again, never again. We're going to buy way under what we can. We don't want to be a slave. You think you own that, it owns you, right?
No question. Whenever you try to own matter, it owns you.
Yes. And isn't that what's happened as we've gone down this materialistic path?
Yeah.
We're going faster and faster and faster to get where? To get nowhere. We become human doings rather than human beings that have the experience of being alive on this planet. It's a wonderful, wonderful opera, huh? Except it hurts. But if you're so busy doing, and you're stressed out all the time, you can't have the experience, the wonderful experience of being alive on this planet. So, so that's right. So all those things were in my mind. They weren't in cosmic dreaming, but all those experiences that you have, right? That for us, it was a wake up. It was a wake up. And when we came back, we built this small house. We had 2.5 acres. We could flood irrigate it. We had massive gardens. It was beautiful. We raised a steer and 2 lambs on the pasture. We'd flood irrigate that. It was like, yeah. And it didn't take us long to pay off that house because we didn't know that much on it. You mentioned Jeremy Lent's book, The Web of Meaning.
Yeah, it's a great book.
I'm going to read it. I read a summary. We can come back to this, but there's another one I just read, Against the Machine on the Unmaking of Humanity.
You're the second person to tell me about that book, and I have a friend, Nathan Riley, that knows the author, and I asked him to see if I could get him on the podcast. Apparently, he's got some health challenges right now, so he's not doing podcasts. So I was sorry to hear that.
Well, I saw one he did with I think New York Times or one of those outfits. He came, but when I read the summary, of Jeremy Lentz, and we can get to that at the end. And they're the same book, Paul. They're talking the same thing, of what.
Is that right?
Yeah, and so what I was pointing out here in Cosmic Dreaming, and I'll just read a couple. It just fits. During the last 10,000 years, Homo sapiens transformed from hunters and gatherers to small-scale farmers to massive-scale industrial agriculturalists. In the process, we broke our linkages with one another in the landscapes that nourish and sustain us. Once a species reliant on wild plants and animals for food, medicine, clothing, and shelter, we're now being consumed by the fossil fuel-based industrial, agricultural, and materialistic money-driven economies. Prior to the 17th century, the predominant worldview was one of a spiritual, organic, living universe where people lived in mutually dependent relationships with nature's communities. But from the scientific and industrial revolutions of the 17th century to the artificial intelligence of today, Western civilization's technological, industrial, money-driven machine has eroded our connections with culture, with nature, and with spirituality. We now live in a highly competitive, monetized economic systems based on manufactured scarcity for worldly things, huh? And we're just running faster and faster to get nowhere, right? To get nowhere.
It's getting pretty intense.
how do you step out of that? And that's what Sue and I thought when we were over there in Australia. Here's these challenges that we were facing, and when we came back, we said, no, no more. We'll never do that. And I remember, and I loved Sue's father, but he said, you always spend as much as you make. And what we decided, no, you don't have to spend as much as you make. You don't have to do that. It's how much do you want? How much do you want? And how much do you want to be owned? You think you own it. How much do you want to be owned by all that stuff you think you need? And Sue and I have really tried to step out of that. And then I go on. European conquerors despised Native Americans for their poverty and simplicity. But as Charles Alexander Eastman, Oyesa, points out in The Soul of the Indian, an interpretation, quote, they forget perhaps that his religion forbade the accumulation of wealth and the enjoyment of luxury. End quote. To them, the love of possessions was a snare, and a complex society a source of needless peril and temptation. That belief kept their spirits free from envy, pride, and greed. It's
beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful. Indigenous cultures, then, and then I'll let it go. Indigenous cultures were based on harmonious interdependence where cooperation was valued and expected, those relationships with one another. And that resulted in an interdependent view of life. They shared the fruits of their skills and successes with their less fortunate brothers out of the recognition of the at oneness, right? That we're not separate.
Mm-hmm.
With gratitude for the plants and animals that nourished and sustained their communities. Plants, insects, fish, birds, and mammals were their family. And that's a beautiful thing, right? I love it. To be in a connection with something. The last point I'll make, and it relates to what you've talked about, Paul, and I know you probably felt this too. When I was in high school and college, I worked on a ranch west of Salida, Colorado. In those days, we flood irrigated grain and alfalfa by hand. We didn't use pivots. So we were out there all day long doing that. Mm-hmm. We hauled hay by hand, not with machines. We moved cattle that lived in extended families. We moved them across rangelands during the spring, the summer, and the fall, up in elevation and then down. We didn't use the virtual fencing that's becoming so popular nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not against these practices. The point I'm making is you can't love what you don't know intimately. And we had intimate relationships with water, soil, plants, and animals, rather than the technologies that now distance us from the natural world. We were intimately linked with the seasons as well, with planting and growing hay, grain, and gardens in spring and summer, with harvesting in fall, and with feeding hay to sheep and cattle in winter. We nurtured them and they nourished us. And I've never felt so grounded and centered physically and spiritually as I did in those years working on the ranch. Growing, hunting, gathering, and eating plants and animals is the experience of endless transformation. As I eat, the energy and matter in someone, in a being, becomes this entity I call, quote, me, which will, in the flicker of a cosmic eye, return to the earth to become plants that nourish animals. In pondering this mystery, we may, with gratitude, come to realize that all life is sacred.
You're sharing about, how bigger house, bigger bills, more pressure, more stress, and, you just get to the point where you're just running flat on a treadmill. And recently I came across a report that I found quite shocking. It said that 72% of the people in the United States making $300,000 a year or more are now having to use credit cards to meet their core living expenses, which is, that's $300,000 a year. That used to be considered quite wealthy. As you were talking earlier about, going into a house that you called a dump and then realizing you really enjoyed it there, I had a flashback from my childhood, and I was thinking, when was I the happiest as a kid? And right away, what came to my mind is fairly early when my stepfather married my mother. They decided to go on a long vacation, and we had a Chevrolet station wagon, and my parents got a nice big tent and everything we needed to camp. And we just drove, I don't know, we spent 2 weeks traveling all over the United States and going from campground to campground and roasting marshmallows and cooking on a fire and being together. And that's the only time I can remember my family being happy together and getting along. That's the only time in my entire childhood that I felt safe and happy, and there wasn't marital fights over money constantly and battles over this, and mom and dad being freaked out about not having enough money to pay bills, and on it would go. And I have had to make a transition in my own life because we wanted to raise the kids on a farm, and we wanted to not have to pay so much money. I used to have an office where I did all my client work because I found I couldn't get anything done if I was at the institute because people would not stop interrupting me all the time. The point I'm making, though, is this is a very expensive place to live, California in general, but to live here, the cost of a property like this, and we can't manage it without a full-time gardener and handyman, etc. And it really brought me into a sort of a place of conversation with my soul, and just feeling all the pressure all the time of having to make so much money. But my soul said to me, you realize you've always had those fears, but you've always had the money to live the way you wanted to live. But what you don't realize is that you've devoted yourself to putting love in the world, and that the world is always taking care of you, and that love is a boomerang. It's always coming back to you. And so my soul told me, stop worrying about whether or not you're going to make enough money, and just pour your love into the world and trust that the universe will take care of you, and that you'll be at the right place at the right time. And if it comes to the point where this isn't the best place, you'll go somewhere else. And if you look back on your life, you'll see every place you went got better, and you were more excited and had what you need, and nothing's going to change. And so the reason I'm sharing this is because I made a transition within myself from viewing the expense of being here as an expense that I had to labor for, to realizing that I was in an exchange of reciprocity with the whole universe and with God. And that as long as I did my best, and I prayed and moved my feet every day, and did what I loved to do, and did it from my heart, and did it to help other people, that the universe would provide. And it's so beautiful because when the students come up here, they just absolutely love it. Like they have an experience here like they never had at the Chek Institute before. I think for all of us, there's a lot of us right now in the world that have big bills for whatever reason, and homes that are expensive, and the economy is getting more challenging. But I'm just sharing that if it helps anybody to make the transition from working to make a living, to living from your heart and knowing that the universe will provide for you. And, Walter Russell speaks about what he calls the love principle. He says, as long as the giving is equal to the taking of love, that you'll always stay in balance and be supported. And I studied Walter Russell's life, and he said he never thought about money. He just thought about what could he give to the world, and the money always managed to show up. If you're in that situation right now, it could be very stressful, and it can be leading to a lot of health problems, which makes life even more complicated and expensive. But instead of living to try to pay bills, try loving and trusting that as long as your intention is to love and to share and to support everybody else, that you're giving something to the universe. And we know everything in the universe goes in circles, because all you got to do is look at every galaxy out there. What goes out has to come back. That's why I say love is a boomerang. It's got nowhere else to go but back. So that's just something I felt is important to share, because your story is very true and very real, but it was a transition I had to make Otherwise, the pressure of having to make as much money as I do was just too much for me to carry. For many years, the overhead on the institute was probably about $100,000 a month, and that was very heavy for me to carry. And it pushed me into a spiritual situation where I had to ask for help, and that was the outcome.
Millions of people are carrying parasites, and most don't even know it. In fact, the chances are good that you have one or more parasites inside you right now, leeching off your nutrients and strength. But before you get all freaked out about it, here is some good news. Organifi's Parasite Cleanse Kit contains a unique and specialized blend of carefully chosen natural elements that help locate, kill, and remove unwanted guests and pests from the body. Like a magnet finding iron in the sand, these ingredients adhere to the toxins and parasites and pull them out of hiding, ultimately removing them from your body. This two-step combination of 100% natural ingredients includes the Parasite Cleanse capsules and the Bind and Restore tincture, creating an easy-to-use cleanse that is perfect to help get rid of your unwanted guests. Now is a great time to try Organifi's Parasite Cleanse Kit and save 20%. Go to Organifi.com/Chek20 and use the promo code Chek20. That's Organifi.com/CHEK20 and use the code Chek20 for a 20% discount.
It's a beautiful story, Paul, and it gives another side to all that we're talking about, and it makes perfect sense to me. Following your heart, following your heart.
Yeah.
And let love guide you. And then it makes me think about the Tao and doing by not doing, in a sense, right?
Yeah. One of the things that I've incorporated into the Chek Institute for my Chek professionals, so they know how to help people heal, is these questions that I found. And I actually learned some of them from Angie when she was going through shaman school. She spent 3 years in advanced training with Michael Harner at the Institute for Shamanic Studies. And so these are the questions that a real shaman will ask you when you request their help. And I think everybody listening, this is really, and especially if you're having struggles in your life right now, answer these questions for yourself. Question 1. When did you lose your sense for the magic, mystery, and awe of life? The answer to that question tells me as a therapist where to look into the issues that led you to losing the magic, mystery, and awe of life. Because if I don't address that, then I'm just going to be doing symptomatic treatment. When did you stop enjoying great stories? There's your myths. Like every tribe had its myth, and those myths were memorized orally, they were recited, they were danced, they were sung, there was costumes made. The children were indoctrinated into that myth because it was a way of living, a way of relating, a way of being. I think it's very important for people to go back and start reading great stories and origin myths. And my buddy Latao Wang has a great book and card deck on the 40 of the Greek heroes and gods, which is phenomenal. I found so much beauty in that, and all of them have such great lessons about morality and ethics and what happens when we don't live with concern for other people. So when I find out when you stopped enjoying great stories, I want to know why, and almost always it had something to do with people going to school. How's that for a paradox?
Yeah, that's not a good statement on school, right?
No. There's now, I think, 2 or 3 research papers that have come out in the last year showing the more people use AI, the less creative they are, the less disciplined they are to get things done, and the more unintelligent they become.
Just in the last year, I've become aware of the number of people that use Chat GPT, for instance.
That's AI, yeah.
But then where's the human creativity? Where's your own creativity and your own passion? When I write something like this, I'm pouring my heart, my emotion, my
Soul.
my experience, my soul, all of that into that. And so imagine that I asked Chat GPT, it could probably write that thing for all I know, but
In
but
0.28 seconds.
yes, that's right. And the books that have been, I'm trying to think of the name of this one. I just the anxious generation.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that book.
Yeah.
One of the things that you alluded to in your paper that I think is relevant right this minute in our conversation is, the promise of technology forever since the industrial age is it's going to make your life easier. But what I've seen is the more we make our life easier, the worse we get. And now GTP does all your thinking for you. It does your organization. So, the problem is that the easier our life gets, the more sedentary we get, the more uncreative we get, the more disconnected we get, and on it goes. And so I think the whole concept of making life easier isn't working. I think that's one of the reasons that we attract crises to ourselves to initiate us back into the realities of living. And when you study the hero's journey, or you study tarot, the journey of the fool through tarot, there's always challenges. And those things are meant to grow you. You and I both come from a farm. It's work to work with animals and build fences and harvest crops and milk and take care of animals and take care of the soil and split firewood, and it goes on and on. But God, that's what made me a great athlete when I was young. It's what made me tough. I would never have had the strength to build an institute like I had if I didn't have that work ethic and that connection to the reality of life.
That's so absolutely the case, Paul. It would be good if every child had to grow up on a farm, actually.
Absolutely.
On a farm or a ranch. And the innovation that stimulates, right? I mean, when I was on the ranch, I'm not trying, just reflecting, this is not trying to, but if something broke, you fixed it, right? You didn't
had
call
no choice
from town to fix it. If it was a machine, and you did, and you got so creative. You got so creative, right? Because you had to think, and how empowering that makes you in terms of building an institute or doing whatever you end up doing in life, and the hard work. So I sound like an old person, and I'm not trying to, but I mean, it was 10-hour days out there, and I made nothing. But I was learning so 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and you make $250 a month or whatever it was. But it was a lifetime of lessons. And when I went back to grad school, I mean, I could outwork anyone.
Yep.
And why was that? It wasn't me per se. It's just I had learned, about building fence all day long and on, all those things you're talking about. And
you learn what you're capable of.
Yeah, you do. And it's so empowering. You just come to feel like I can do anything.
Yep.
There's nothing that I can't do. And so it's not me or Paul necessarily. It was that environment, right? And I have a cousin who doesn't have any of that experience, but he said, I think every kid should be raised on a ranch, and what they would learn from that experience.
I mean, look at what happened during COVID, and look at the social mindset around getting dirty today. People are so afraid to get dirty.
Right.
I'm like, shit, man, I grew up covered from head to friggin' toe in the dirt.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you're working each day, you're covered from head to toe with dirt and grease and
cow shit and piss and look what the research on the immune system shows. The more animals you were raised with, the more pets you were raised with, the more diverse your environment, the stronger your immune system. And I'm like, well, no wonder when nobody's got an immune system. We've got this sterilized environment on Rockefeller bullshit medicine, and people are actually afraid of dirt. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like, what in the world is going on? You guys have so departed, and this is all backed by science too. This is another bullshit thing. Science has lost its way.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there again, if you think to our ancestors, they had daily contact with all of that, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in the not that distant past, we were still very much involved in that way. And as you say, in the last 50, 100 years, we've just so lost our relationship with the natural world. And I don't think it's just me. I think that experience is profound when you're of your relationship. I used to feel like a little ant, Paul. I don't know what an ant feels like, but they're beautiful. And you watch them seasonally when they come out in the spring and they're doing their work all in the summer and then in the fall. And I just think that's kind of how we are, and each thing in its season. So now we're going to plant and grow things, and then we're going to harvest. And in the fall, we put the straw up and get the meadows, and there was just rhythms and cycles, right? And then you talking about science and those kind of things. So that was 4 months of the year when I was in college, high school, and then college, that I would do that. And then I'd go back to Colorado State University in Fort Collins. And it was mind twisting to me because now you're being thrown into a totally different world, right? Totally different universe. And it would take me a couple of months to adjust to that. Then I'd get in rhythm. Then I'd go back to the ranch in May. And it's like, boy, this is so sleepy town, nothing happening out, And then I'd get back in the cycle of that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I think most people that have done any kind of studying of nature, of animals, of human beings know human beings are inherently, almost innately creative. And what made us so successful as a creature of nature is our ability to solve problems and challenges and to build tools and to come up with new ways of doing things that were not typical to an instinctually driven animal. We were able to rise above our instincts and our biology to use our cerebral cortex to get out of the box and think bigger. One of the things that I see as a consistent theme of people that have fallen into a nihilistic mindset, or what Ken Wilber calls flatland, living on the treadmill of doing nothing but existing and paying bills, which leads to a lot of addiction and depression because people have to find a way to get out of this dimension. So unfortunately, the most popular way to do that is to get alcohol in your body, which is devastating. And now we have legalization of marijuana and soon to be legalization of psilocybin. And I think those things have their place, but if that becomes the way you live instead of helping you be more creative, which they can, not the alcohol, the marijuana, the psilocybin can, if it's used intelligently. It's been used for thousands of years for that. But my point is that if we don't engage life with the spirit of how can I create more out of myself? What am I capable of? What do I love enough to master? When I was a stock car racer and a motocross racer and every sport I've ever been in, I was less concerned about beating the other guy, but more concerned about improving on my last performance. That was always for me the edge. If I could I can't always guarantee I'm going to beat the next guy, but I can work on improving myself. And I think we've lost the spirit of creativity. We've lost the spirit of mastery. And in many ways, we've even lost the spirit of winning because life has become so much of a spectator sport through media now that hardly anybody's out living. And, they're watching people go down the Colorado River in rafts instead of doing it. They're watching people have sex instead of doing it.
Absolutely. Like Joseph Campbell said in one of the things, if a human, and that was 50 years ago, if human had a choice of going to heaven or watching a video on heaven, they'd watch the video.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's what you're saying, huh? And, that's so true. And when you think back over a life, not to wear Joseph Campbell out, but his saying, follow your bliss.
Totally.
What is it in you? And I always said, follow your heart. And still do that. And, I can just think back over the years. When we left the ranch, I was very unhappy, very, very unhappy. And we had some offers. I was painting houses. Somewhere deep inside, it wasn't cognitive, rational, analytical. It was just a knowing I'm not on the right path. The soul knowing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And then when got accepted at Utah State University, it's just a knowing again. This is the path, But you probably felt that in terms of what you were talking about earlier with the Chek Institute, deep inside.
Oh, absolutely.
And letting that be your guide. I have always, before I ever heard Joseph Campbell talking about it, it was just, I absolutely know what's inside, and whatever it takes to realize that, the quiet time, whatever, however you do that, but it's a powerful thing. And then I've often thought what you were saying, it's the creativity. We love that. We love to be creating, right? And there's a million ways to do it. Nobody has to do the same thing, right?
You can be creative with almost anything.
Yes, you can. And what a wonderful feeling that is. And then to me, it's always seemed to lead to relationships with others, in one way or another. It leads you to wonderful kind of interactions and relationships with others. Doesn't have to be that, I guess, but and boy, that was what was fun on the ranch too. Just all the challenges. When I taught that course I was talking about earlier, there were 4 sections to it: challenges, not problems, challenges, opportunities, living in an evolutionary spirit, transcending boundaries.
What were those 4 again? Challenges?
Challenges, opportunities was the second section, living in an evolutionary spirit, and then transcending boundaries, which is about love, right? Love as the creative force. And I certainly put some of that flavor in cosmic dreaming, but in cosmic dreaming, there was a part I put here, quote, when we talk about settling the world's problems, Joseph Campbell concludes, quote, we're barking up the wrong tree. The world is perfect. It's a mess. It's always been a mess. We're not going to change it. Our job is to straighten out our own lives. Those sentiments are echoed in the Hindu view of life. Quote, all talk of social progress, as Houston Smith writes, the Hindu view of our visit to Earth, quote, of cleaning up the world, of creating the kingdom of heaven on earth. In short, all dreams of utopia are not just doomed to disappointment. They misjudge the world's purpose, which is not to rival paradise, but to provide a training ground for the human spirit.
Amen.
Yes, don't you think? And so embrace that, right? I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to have incredible challenges. And when I read these near-death experiences, not to wear it out, Betty Eades or Eben Alexander, they say the same things over and over again, as the point is for us to grow spiritually. And how do we do it? Through loving kindness and compassion for one another. And so
yes.
When I started, I always said, look, I've worked so much in this area and I'm so much biased toward it, right? So you got to look at everything I say with that in mind, that it has captured me totally. And so never forget that all this is working hypotheses and so on and so forth. And we can have dialogue about this, but because you work in something, it's easy to come to believe your own bullshit, right?
Mm-hmm. I just say, look, all you got to do is ask yourself, how's that working for me? Like if you're a dogmatic anything, how's that working for you? And if you're happy in your life and you're centered, then your hypothesis is still functional.
Right.
But if you're running around telling everybody else how to live, but you're living a miserable life, your relationships are falling apart, you lost your sex drive and your creativity, yet you're trying to sell me on that idea. I'm the worst guy in the world to try that. I'm just going to say, how's that working for you? There's a reason you're here. For example, I've had countless vegans give me long lectures when I told them they needed to eat meat because their bodies were starving for essential nutrients and their genetics could not handle being vegan, and they would give me lectures, and I'm saying, well, if this is all true, then why are you paying me $750 an hour because you're sick?
Yeah.
There's the challenge of the hypothesis. It might have worked for a while, but it ain't working anymore. And if you keep doing it, and I'm just using veganism as a placeholder. It's not, it's
Exactly.
any ideology. I've had millions of athletes try to convince me there's all sorts of bullshits, including steroids. It's just like, don't even try that shit. The shortcuts never work, not in the long run.
Absolutely the case, Paul. Absolutely.
From my experience of people in the life extension movement, I'm going to live to this age, and they're taking 120 pills and they're doing, biohacking. And I'm like, you're just afraid to die. If you want to get over your fear of death, try living every day. And then there's no remorse. Using tricks to extend your life when you're not living doesn't do a damn thing.
Health isn't just one thing, it's everything working together. And one of the fastest growing areas in health and wellness is integrated health, the middle ground between fitness and rehab. People who follow this path see real long-term results. And this field provides amazing opportunities for those looking for a career change or upgrade. If I've already piqued your interest, go to paul.chekinstitute.com/Spirit Gym to learn more about the brand new Chek Integrated Health Foundation program, or tap the link in the show notes. The Chek Institute has been educating Chek practitioners for over 30 years. They learn a step-by-step system that integrates advanced assessments, functional movement, and lifestyle coaching as a unified approach, allowing them to help their clients find lasting success that simply can't be achieved by just following a single pathway. But sometimes getting started on a new path can be challenging. That's why we created the new Chek Integrated Health Foundation program, building on Paul Chek's system that's been refined for over 30 years and practiced by more than 70,000 Chek-trained professionals worldwide. It's self-paced with lifetime access, community, payment plans, and limited time bonuses. When you complete it, you'll be able to run a complete client process, screen lifestyle factors, assess movement, design client-centered plans, and deliver a high-end service session after session so your work becomes referable, respected, and built to last. So whether you're looking for a career change and wanting a roadmap, or you're a fitness trainer tired of commoditized sessions, or maybe a medical professional frustrated by poor follow-through between appointments, the new Chek Integrated Health Foundation program can help you find success and fulfillment. Go to paul.chekinstitute.com/Spirit Gym to learn more about the brand new Chek Integrated Health Foundation program, or tap the link in the show notes.
No, it doesn't. And, the kind of material we're talking about, the mythologies, the near-death experiences of what people describe. I tell you, when my time comes, I'm not going to fight in the least. Sue and I talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
We're not going to go extensive medical kinds of treatment.
No, me either.
I mean,
I'm going to die when I'm done.
Yes, exactly. And that's, when the time comes, I'm not going to resist at all. It's amazing. And all these people, they don't want to come back when they're in that other dimension, but they're
Right.
told, you've got work still to do. You've got some work to do. And so you need to come back. And Betty Eadie was talking about that, and she said, no, I refuse. This is my home. This is my home. And then finally, Jesus said, okay, I'm going to show you why you need to go back. And she got a preview, and she said, okay, I see. And then I think, Betty, I don't know her or anything, but I read her book 30 years ago, 35 years ago, and it's touched me,
Yeah, well, that's the point of paying it forward.
Yes, that's the boomerang, right?
That's right.
She makes a point. We should never commit suicide. We should not do that, because it's these challenges that are, when I was in deep depression, I'm telling you, think, why go on? I mean, just to get up each day was a chore, and then to try to engage other people and the world. It was, you think of that. You think, well, should I just end it. But Sue and our young children, and she was an angel to me during that. She never put pressure. She said, whatever you need to do. You know, I wanted to get out of the university system. I was ready to beg. But, and I'm saying this for the reasons you said earlier. You know, a lot of people are depressed. I think it's good to talk about these things and to try to put a positive spin on them. That it's so horrific, you don't know how you're going to make it. But if you can make it, and then in retrospect, you may see how much you grew during that period.
Yeah, it's like winter when the tree has to grow into the earth, or it can't sustain itself as it gets bigger, right? And we have to have these periods of growing down and into the darkness of ourselves, or we won't be able to take the weight of more external growth in the outer world.
Amen to that. And in that sense, then trials transform, huh? Trials,
yeah,
they're transformative and in a really beautiful sense. And that was the whole point of starting that class on challenges. Here are all the challenges that are out there nowadays across the board. And but they're not problems, they're opportunities, huh? Opportunities to create in the sense that we've been talking. And then to learn to live in an evolutionary spirit, constantly in that spirit of moving, evolving. You know, when I was a grad student learning all these wonderful things, and I was into it, totally into loving it. But I used to say, is there one thing that cuts through all of this? Is there one thing that I can, and I finally said, yeah, there's one thing. The only constant in life is change.
And the ego hates it.
Yes, and the ego hates it. And so many of the things we did in natural resources, I would see, well, it's trying to go back to the way that things were. I used to say they never were the way they were, and they never will be again. So get over it, you know. Yeah. We're all weeds on the way to extinction, right? I mean, in range, it was like, how were these communities, and in ecology, how were these plant communities and animal communities originally, and we've got to go back to that. Well, there's no going back, right?
I don't think what you and I are encouraging people here is to go back. What I, in my own heart and soul, and I think you'll agree, is what we're trying to establish is that there are principles to live by. That if we take what we learn from native cultures and we take what we learn from our historical record of mythology, and we take what we've learned from everything you and I've just been talking about, we're talking about key principles. My whole institute's built on principles. Nutrition, it's a principle. You're either in food that is good for your body and good to poop it out to the earth, or it's not good for you. That's a principle. Hydration is a principle. You got to drink something that's good for your body and good to pee out. Breathing, we have to breathe effectively. And if you're psychologically stressed or traumatized, we've got to figure that out. We got to get to the principle of the fact that breathing drives life at the physiological level and even the spiritual level. Sleep, we need to adhere to the principle that we need enough sleep to regenerate our bodies and our minds, or we become dysfunctional. Thinking, we have to have the capacity for holistic thinking and problem solving and dialogue, not dogma and shortcuts and technology that doesn't make life easier, even though it looks like it does. There's a principle. And movement, we have to honor the fact that we have a biological animal body that has a definite need for movement. And if it doesn't get enough, it starts to break down, and there's no drugs and no surgeries and no pills that'll fix it. You cannot avoid engaging the principle of movement. You know, and then I have 4 doctors. Dr. Happiness. What is happy making for you? And are you going to take responsibility for doing that? Otherwise, you're going to end up looking for pills or other people to do it for you, and that never works. Dr. Diet, Dr. Movement, and Dr. Quiet, and that includes introspection time. The principle is if you don't go within, you go without. That's a hard principle. It's a reality. Neither Fred or I are saying, go find an antiquated farm to live on and think you can live that way. We can't live the way Fred lived when he was a kid, and we can't live the way I lived when I was a kid. We can get pretty close because I'm 64. So I like our farm here, we live quite close to the way I lived on a farm. The difference is we didn't have iPhones on our farm.
Right.
the point is, I raised my kids on the principles of the farm that I was raised on. We can all study the principles of mysticism and live those. We can look at the grounding principles of what religion was really supposed to do and practice real religion, not dogma.
Absolutely, Paul. I couldn't agree more. And when I started out as a young researcher, we were really trying to study practices that maybe people would adopt. But I very quickly came to realize that these practices are all unique to each place, to each person, and so forth. So I thought, what we really need to study are principles that transcend time and space. And so the kinds of things that we were studying related to nutrition, for instance, and the nutritional wisdom of the body to know, and the uniqueness of each individual to figure out what works for them. Those things, the importance of social relationships, mother, young, food and habitat, on and on and on, all those things. But all those were principle based. And so when I taught, I used to, as you do, I used to teach from that standpoint, and then I would say, okay, now here's how Bob Budd took this idea and changed Red Canyon Ranch. He retrained his cattle herd to use uplands, not bottoms. It's all based on the fact that animals learn, that mother's a teacher. Here's how Ray Bannister used nutritional, and so those became the examples, but the principle is what mattered. So then I'm not saying, oh, you should do this because this is the way for you to survive on your ranch. It's you figure it out for yourself. You use your own creativity, but here are some principles that we've been studying. There comes the point where you need to work it out for yourself, right? And you can have a teacher that can give you guideposts and things to consider, but in the end, you're the one that's got to figure it out, right? You've got to work.
I think one of the downfalls of not only modern education, but the modern mindset is it's technique oriented. This technique will make you richer,
Right,
but
right.
The way I would contextualize the technique versus principle, I was a martial artist. I learned a lot of techniques for hurting people. But the principle is you don't use those to hurt people. You use them to defend yourself when someone's trying to hurt you. But you don't go around choking people out just because you can and you got a new technique. Let me go, choke out my school teacher today. But the key distinction is we have to be very conscious because we've got new techniques for photoshopping. We've got new techniques for all the technology is a lot of technique stuff. It's like AI. You don't even have to do your own art anymore. There's a technique you can use. The program's built for a program is like a technique. But if we don't have a principle to guide the application of techniques, then we just get lost in the details. And the next thing you know, we're smart, dumb people. And here we are, right? Here we all are.
Living totally inauthentic lives, huh?
Yeah.
Totally inauthentic lives. There's nothing real about the whole thing.
And then waiting for somebody else to fix you or thinking you can pay someone to fix you. The
Yeah.
first thing I tell my patients and clients, I'm not a therapist that's going to fix you. There's no doctor that's going to fix you. You're here to get coached. I coach people that have acquired diseases. I don't fix people that have diseases. This is your teacher. I'm going to teach you how to engage it and learn from it. And if I fix you, then you're going to become codependent on me. Now I'm your new drug, and I don't want to be anybody's addiction.
Absolutely. So you're trying to foster independent self-authority and responsibility, right?
That's esprit de corps. Make something out of yourself. See what you can. How much God can you get out of you? That's one of my mottos. How much God can I let flow out of me?
That's right. You're a beautiful, beautiful individual, and let that individuality come out of you, right? Anita Moorjani's book, another near-death experience, Dying to Be Me.
Yeah.
Was a huge, huge part of her. She was never allowed to be who she was, and how conflicted she became. And then she, ended up with cancer. It's an amazing story that she tells, and then has her near-death experience, and she comes back, and what you need to be is you. Be you. You're a manifestation of the divine in the world, and be your unique. Let that come forth. But there's so many ways that people attempt to crush that in one way or another, and it can happen with parents and families, right?
No, definitely.
Be who you are, live who you are. And that doesn't mean you don't seek guidance and counseling and coaching, and all the things we've talked about can help you to figure that out, right?
It just means you listen to your own heart.
Right, absolutely what we've been saying. And I just think and then we need to let you get back to those questions. But if you're following your heart, if you're really in tune with that and staying in tune, you will come to get back into the magic, the mystery, the awe, the appreciation of the great stories. You sing and dance. Life is just it's a joy and a wonderful, wonderful thing. But it's easy to get messed up. And we've said this, but I've become cynical as I've aged when I think of the corporate world and a lot of the religions. And I'm not trying to generalize, because I know there's good people within all of that, but I come to see so much the control,
Yeah.
Power and the control. Yeah. Power and control, rather than trying to set you free.
There's good people in hell too, Fred.
Yeah. Well, and like Joseph Campbell said, heaven and hell and all the gods, they're not out there somewhere. They're right here.
No.
They're in you, right here.
Joseph Campbell said something really funny one time. He was talking about God and beliefs in God, and he said, here's an interesting one for you. In France, only 35% of the population believes in God, but 65% of them believe in hell. He says, go figure. How do you get that? That's a sign of confusion right there.
Yes, it is. It certainly is.
Well, let me wrap up the podcast here. We've had a great run. It's been tremendous fun and just so much important things we've touched on. I hope everybody listening takes advantage of these, guys that have been around the block a few times. I'm younger than you are, but I'm still older than probably most of the people listening. So the first question is, when did you lose your sense of magic, mystery, and awe for life? Look at that. Go back, ask yourself what happened, and can I forgive anybody that might have been involved in causing that pain or that derailment, and then get back to what it is in me that's magical and mysterious and gives me a sense of awe. When did you stop enjoying great stories? Get back to that. When did you stop singing? If you did, ask yourself why. Almost always it's because someone criticized you. So start singing in the shower and singing in your car. Remember, being happy may not make you sing, but singing makes you happy. When did you stop dancing? Kids dance spontaneously all the time. My kids dance all over the place. I don't have to say anything. Just put on some music and off they go. And sometimes they're dancing without any music, and we have to turn the music on just to keep it fun. Or we make music together. That's another fun thing we do with the kids. We got piano, and we have a music room. So we loaded up with the toys for the kids, not toys, but instruments, so we can try anything and just see what their hearts want to get to. So dance to your favorite music, put on your favorite music, move your body. It's free. It's spontaneous. You can do it anywhere. You don't need a gym. All you got to do is, put on your favorite music and get into it. And that's a great way to take care of your body. And then finally, when did you stop enjoying being alone with yourself? I think that's one of the most important of all of them. When did you stop enjoying being alone with yourself? It's amazing to me how many people cannot handle being alone with themselves. And to me, that means you've overlooked the greatest gift the universe can give, and that is the chance to say, I am, and be alive, and to be able to create and to enjoy love and relationships and, go on the journey of life and, leave some paint on the canvas while you're here. My God, get into it. So I think if we all look at those questions and if you want to make the world a better place right now, doing any of those 5 things already does it, because that's where most people are trapped. I haven't ever had a single patient in my 42-year career with any kind of chronic challenge, crisis, or pain that didn't answer at least 2 or 3 of those questions with an affirmative, that's when it happened. And I found that's exactly where we had to do our healing work. And so that also goes to show you the wisdom of real shamanism. That's what real shamanism's about, is not only and asking the right questions, but using natural practices, natural foods and principles to heal, and doing the work yourself, and getting the help and the guidance and the coaching you need to learn how to incorporate those things into a daily way of living and relating. So, Fred, is there any final comments you'd like to make? Any websites, new books, anything you want to share?
I don't have a website anymore. I don't have any promotion, actually.
Well, you do right now.
I do. That's right. I shouldn't say that, but I don't have anything like that. So, I just I would like to say, for me, there's nothing I would rather be speaking about a conversation more than what we're doing right here. I think it's what matters. It's what.
Yeah, thank you. Me too.
And to be able to do that with you, it's a blessing. It's a joy and a blessing for me. I just feel so passionate about it, and we use cosmic dreaming as a vehicle to get into some of these things. And for me, that as I mentioned earlier, that's been a wonderful way for me to spend time with myself, in a sense, just reflecting and putting things down, as just reflections on life. And when it comes time, as we said earlier, when it comes time to go, I'm ready to go. And people talk about, do you have faith? Don't need faith, huh? Have experience, the experience.
Yeah.
Of it all. And so I'm ready to go when the time comes. I'm ready to try to I think, how can we spread loving kindness and compassion and the kind of ideas that we talked about here today? In my mind, who needs alcohol? Who needs other kind of drugs? The experience of being alive and of participation and the beauty of the natural world and the people in all that's happening, even what we see as a horror, is a wonder in a way. And so
Yeah.
you can participate, huh? It's a wonderful, wonderful opera, and I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to participate in this carcass called Fred, and to meet you and to spend time with you. Those are all blessings, huh?
Yep. Well, don't go away too quick. We got more podcasts to do.
Okay, that sounds good, Paul. I won't, and I don't know when. I know, we're ending this podcast, but if you have any thoughts related to where to put cosmic dreaming, I've held off, and I don't know why, Paul. I've held off on submitting that. And I've had so much fun just writing and working on things, deleting this, adding that, but I have this feeling, there again, it's following the heart, that I'm holding off for some reason, which will become apparent.
Yeah.
But
my feedback, like I said before, is go for the place that's going to get the most eyes on it, because that paper is so important right now that the more people that read it, the more people will share it, and the more medicine will be given by it. We can make it available in the show notes as a PDF. And there's a lot of people that listen to the podcast. This podcast is listened to in 172 countries. So that's bigger reach than most any publishing house you're going to go to.
So there you go, right there, and we'll make it available in the notes. I'm going to send you an updated version.
Okay.
It's not much, but I'll send you a PDF of the.
I'll tell you where you need to send it. You need to send it to Joe Rogan.
Yeah, seriously,
He's got more reach than all the major media television stations combined. So, and he would get it.
Yeah, because what's the point? I mean, I so appreciate, Paul, that you that you read that and that it resonated with you. I wasn't surprised, but that we were able to have this conversation about it, because that's going to be, even if people don't want to listen to the whole conversation, it can take 30 minutes, to read it. It's not that long, but every comment I get back is, it really moves people, and they say I cry. I cry, and
I had tears coming for sure.
Given that people are crying, and you think this is a wonderful thing to try to touch people's hearts, huh?
Well, the thought that I had when I was reading is everybody talks about Mother Nature, but this paper was written by Father Nature. So you balanced the scale there. We got Mama Nature and Papa Nature. So, well, Fred, thank you. We've had a great run. I think we can leave it here. We've shared a lot, and I'm excited for all of you to be able to hang out with Fred and take advantage of his depth and wisdom. And he's a gift to all of us. And I will make sure that the paper can be downloaded from the show notes. It's very, very worth reading, obviously. And thanks to my sponsors for all the love and support for the podcast, and for all of us that use the products, and for all of you buying from the sponsors, because that money goes to the hands of organic and biodynamic and free-range farmers, which means it goes right back into the earth, the plants, the animals, and is the solution we're after. And it helps the podcast. So that's love, 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 love. And I look forward to sharing a great podcast with you real soon. And Fred, you're the best, buddy. I can't wait to give you a big fat hug and physical as soon as we can make that happen. And we got another podcast coming up with Fred on another paper he wrote that's just as badass. So stay tuned. Lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek and today's guest, Fred Provenza. Fred is generously sharing his entire Cosmic Dreaming paper with our listeners. Visit the show notes page for a link to the PDF. You can find out more about the Behave program, co-founded by Fred, at extension.usu.edu/behave. That's extension.usu.edu/behave. You can find Fred's books, Nourishment, Foraging Behavior, and The Art and Science of Shepherding on Amazon. Also visit acresusa.com for more lectures and presentations by Fred. For more interaction with Paul and to share ideas and ask questions about the topics discussed in this podcast, we invite you to join his Spirit Gym program and community. You can participate in live Q&A sessions, access the members forum within the Spirit Gym community, chat with other members, attend weekly virtual meetups with Paul, and study his comprehensive Master Key online program. Explore the options and subscribe today by going to myspiritgym.com. And finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube.